Let's be clear, the United States has the most powerful, most technologically advanced, and most expensive military in the history of the world. It can project overwhelming force to any corner of the globe and win basically any conventional war it chooses to fight. Its goals are usually pretty straightforward: achieve air supremacy, carry out decisive strikes, and completely dismantle an enemy's ability to fight back. But what happens when the enemy refuses to play that game? What if that enemy has spent decades studying America's wins and, more importantly, its losses? What if they've built their entire national defense strategy not to defeat the US head-to-head, which they know is impossible, but to make the very idea of an American victory meaningless? This isn't a hypothetical. This is Iran's playbook. For decades, many in the West have assumed that a war with Iran, while tough, would ultimately be winnable. The script is familiar. A swift and overwhelming air campaign would cripple their military, destroy key infrastructure, and either force the regime to the negotiating table or cause it to collapse. But that assumes America gets to set the rules. Iran's strategy is built on one powerful idea: changing the game entirely. It's designed to pull the US into a quagmire where the usual metrics for victory, like targets destroyed or territory gained, don't add up to a strategic success. Instead, they just become markers of a deeper and deeper entanglement. So first, we'll break down the tactical web of proxy forces, economic warfare, and lopsided weaponry that makes Iran such a complex battlefield. And then we'll get into the deeper geopolitical reasons why even a decisive military win for America could turn into a catastrophic strategic loss. To understand why a conventional win is so difficult, you first have to get that Iran has deliberately chosen not to compete where America is strongest. Instead, it has built a military doctrine designed to turn America's greatest strengths into its biggest vulnerabilities. This is the world of asymmetric warfare, and Iran has spent over 40 years perfecting it around three core pillars. The first, and maybe the most important, is its huge network of proxy groups, often called the axis of resistance. This isn't just a handful of allied militias. It's a strategic buffer and a force multiplier that lets Iran fight wars far from its own borders. This network includes powerful, battle-hardened groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq and Syria. When a conflict kicks off, this network activates, launching attacks across multiple fronts at the same time. This immediately complicates the picture for the US and its allies. An attack on Iran doesn't just mean dealing with Iran, it means dealing with coordinated rocket fire from Lebanon, drone attacks from Iraq, and missile strikes on shipping in the Red Sea. It turns a single conflict into a sprawling regional war that stretches resources, divides attention, and drives up the political and military costs of the fight. And crucially, these proxies aren't just puppets anymore. Groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis have built their own independent ways of getting money and weapons. They run front companies, manage their own logistics, and have become so sophisticated that the threat they pose can sustain itself even if Iran's direct support gets cut off. The second pillar of Iran's strategy is a masterclass in economic warfare, using low-cost, high-impact weapons. This is where the fight happens, not just on the battlefield, but on spreadsheets. Take the Shahed 136, Iran's infamous one-way attack drone. It's a simple but effective weapon that can be mass-produced for an estimated cost of just $20,000 to $50,000 per drone. Now think about the main tool used to shoot it down, a US-made Patriot missile interceptor. Each one of those costs roughly $4 million. That creates a staggering 200 to 1 cost disparity. For every drone Iran sends up, the US and its allies have to spend 200 times more to stop it. This isn't just a weapon, it's a strategy of economic bleeding. Iran doesn't need every drone to hit its target, it just needs to launch enough of them to force the West to burn through its incredibly expensive and limited stockpiles of advanced interceptors. Even with high interception rates, the financial strain is immense. Iran is turning cost itself into a weapon, trying to bleed its opponents dry and make the war too expensive to sustain. The third pillar is Iran's control over geography, specifically the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is the world's most important choke point for energy. Roughly 20% of the world's oil and nearly a fifth of all liquefied natural gas passes through it every day. Dozens of supertankers navigate its shipping lanes daily, powering the economies of Asia and the world. Iran's backyard is this choke point, which gives it a powerful tool for deterrence. By threatening to disrupt or even close the strait with mines, coastal missiles, and swarms of small attack boats, Iran can hold a huge part of the global economy hostage. Any conflict immediately risks sending energy prices soaring, which could create a worldwide economic crisis that puts pressure on Washington's allies and creates massive political strain at home. This geographic advantage means that any war against Iran is never just a regional fight. It's instantly a global economic event, tying America's hands from the very beginning. These tactical problems all feed into a much bigger strategic one. The United States fights wars to achieve clear, decisive goals. In a potential conflict, American objectives would be ambitious: take out Iran's nuclear and missile programs, end its support for proxy groups, and maybe even hope for regime change. But Iran's entire strategy is designed to make those goals impossible to achieve with military force alone. This brings us to the heart of the matter. The two sides have completely different definitions of victory. For the United States, victory means accomplishing its mission. It needs to dismantle the missile program, neutralize the proxies, and ensure Iran can't get a nuclear weapon. It needs a clear, measurable win. For the Iranian regime, victory is much, much simpler: survival. As long as the regime is still in power and its system of government is standing, it can claim to have won. This idea was burned into its DNA during the brutal 8-year war with Iraq in the 1980s, a war defined by human wave attacks and horrific casualties that ended not with a clear victory, but with the survival of the Islamic Republic. Iran learned then that it could absorb unimaginable punishment and still endure. It wins as long as it's still standing and blocking its enemy's goals. This creates a huge strategic trap. The US is playing for checkmate, while Iran is just playing to keep its king on the board. This focus on survival led Iran to develop what its military planners call mosaic defense. After watching the US invade Iraq in 2003 and topple the regime with a swift decapitation strike, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, completely redesigned its command structure. They decentralized their forces into a network of 31 separate, semi-autonomous provincial commands. Each command is like its own self-contained military, with its own intelligence, weapons, and leaders ready to wage an insurgency even if it's cut off from Tehran. This makes the whole system incredibly resilient to the kind of leadership strikes the US is so good at. Taking out a top general or bombing a central headquarters doesn't have the same effect because the mosaic is designed to keep right on fighting. And that leads to the ultimate paradox. What happens if America actually wins? Let's imagine the US achieves all its conventional military goals. The Iranian Air Force and Navy are gone, missile sites are rubble, and American forces are in Tehran. By any traditional measure, that's a decisive victory. But what comes next? The result would almost certainly be a long, bloody occupation of a country of nearly 90 million people, a nation with a fierce sense of national pride and a deep-seated distrust of foreign intervention. The collapse of the government would create a massive power vacuum, likely unleashing sectarian violence and leading to the very kind of failed state that America's interventions in Iraq and Afghanistan tried to prevent. Instead of weakening the hardliners, a foreign invasion would probably ignite a nationalist backlash, rallying support for figures who promise resistance and revenge. The US would be stuck rebuilding a shattered country, bogged down in an unwinnable counterinsurgency, and facing a population that sees it as an occupier, not a liberator. The cost in both lives and money would be astronomical, and the chaos would ripple across the entire Middle East. In this scenario, America wins the war, only to lose the peace in a way that's strategically far more damaging than the original threat. This conflict wouldn't happen in a vacuum. It's a key piece on a global chessboard, and other major powers are playing the game with their own interests at heart. This creates a geopolitical trap that makes a clean American victory all but impossible. The biggest players here are China and Russia. While they probably wouldn't jump in militarily to save Iran, they have absolutely no interest in seeing a quick American victory. For them, a long, expensive American war in the Middle East is a huge strategic gift. It drains US military resources, distracts its political focus, and weakens its alliances. That opens up room for Moscow to expand its influence in Eastern Europe and for Beijing to push its ambitions in the Indo-Pacific. They give Iran crucial non-military support through what's been called an axis of evasion. This network of supply chains and economic deals helps Iran get around Western sanctions, allowing it to get the dual-use technologies it needs for its drone and missile programs. China, in particular, is a key partner. Through a 25-year cooperation agreement, it provides investment in exchange for discounted Iranian oil, giving Tehran a vital economic lifeline. This quiet support from Russia and China ensures Iran is never truly alone, allowing it to keep up its resistance and drag out the conflict, all while America's main rivals watch from the sidelines and benefit. Finally, there's the nuclear shadow that hangs over everything. For years, Iran has pursued a strategy of being a nuclear threshold state. This means it has all the technical skills and fissile material needed to build a nuclear weapon on short notice, but it stops just shy of actually putting one together. This deliberate ambiguity is its own form of deterrence. A full-scale war changes that math completely. If the regime feels its survival is on the line, the pressure to cross that threshold and build a bomb would be immense. It could emerge from the conflict battered, but still standing, and with the very nuclear weapons the war was supposed to prevent. This creates the ultimate strategic blowback. A military campaign launched to stop a nuclear Iran could be the very thing that creates one. The real reason America can't win against Iran isn't about military might. It's about a fundamental, deliberate mismatch in strategy, goals, and what it even means to win. America's military is an exquisite hammer, built to shatter a conventional enemy with overwhelming force. But Iran has spent decades making sure it isn't a nail. It has built a tactical web of asymmetric warfare, a proxy network to start a multi-front war, a strategy of economic attrition to turn cost into a weapon, and control over an economic choke point that holds the global economy hostage. It has embraced a strategic definition of victory where just surviving is success, making it resilient to the kind of decapitation strikes that have brought down other regimes. And it knows that a conventional American win would likely spiral into a catastrophic occupation, a strategic failure far worse than the original problem. This entire strategy is protected by a geopolitical reality where America's great power rivals, China and Russia, have a vested interest in watching the US bleed resources and focus in a war that never seems to end. In the end, the United States is playing chess, focused on capturing the king to declare a quick and total victory. But Iran is playing Go. It's not focused on the king, it's focused on surviving, controlling territory, and making the board so complicated and so costly that its opponent is eventually forced to just walk away from the game. And that is the real reason America can't win. If you learned something from this breakdown, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, and let us know what you think in the comments. What part of this strategic dynamic do you think is the most critical?